welcome to our program, Jones and Company. I'm your host, Christian Jones, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mr. July30th2023, as well as our special guest today, Mr. MauriceTynes. Mr. Tynes, welcome to Jones and Company.
Thank you. It's good to be back here again.
Yes, sir. It's good to have you. And I believe I've conducted a radio interview with you before, but this is the first time I have the pleasure of conducting a television interview. So it's good that we have the opportunity now to sit down and talk.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And a lot of what we want to talk about is democracy in our country, especially in light of the the passing of the Parliamentary Service Bill 2023, and what that means for our country in terms of, and I read just a cursory look at the act, that it mentions explicitly that the purpose of this act is to create an independent and autonomous service commission for the management of Parliament in our country. So just in terms of your initial thoughts on this, I know over your years of experience as Clerk of the House of Assembly, this has not been something that just came about. It's something that you and others have fought for years. In terms of your initial reaction to the act, what are your thoughts?
Firstly, let me say that yes, this is something that we as a House in Parliament have been pushing for many years. We did it internally. We did it through memos, cabinet papers. Even when we attended conferences or we hosted conferences, this is something that we would ask for. And so when you look at our governmental structure, there is a Judicial and Legal Service Commission for the judiciary.
Yeah.
The civil servants and the executive branch, they have the Public Service Commission, and the Parliament was the only branch of government that did not have its own independent service commission.
Yeah.
And I think this is just bringing all of the branches of government up in line.
Right.
Mr. Tynes.
Yes.
Let's be fair. How many people are you talking about when you look at the Senate and the House? How many public officers are you talking about that this commission is going to have responsibility for?
Well, I think the bill has an outline of the number.
Tell the public, please.
Yeah, well, the House, the Parliament as it stands now, they have about, I can't remember, but the ones who actually are what we call the chair clerks, the ones who actually sit in Parliament, there were 3 or 4 there.
So, here is my argument, Mr. Tynes. I see this, all right, the introduction of this parliamentary service bill as an aspect of our democracy which is being introduced after 50 years of independence, all right?
Okay.
Right? From my viewpoint, a better independence gift to the Bahamian people would have been the introduction of local government. Right? This thing is another example, in my opinion, for politicians to have some control, right, over people who are appointed, and many of them will be appointed based on political allegiances, right? Not on merit, because we don't operate like that anymore. All right? All right? And so this is another avenue for politicians to exert control over the parliamentary system. All right? Whereas from my perspective, it is more important at this juncture in our development to have local government.
Mr. Edith, I share your view that we ought to have local government, and I will probably address that at some point today. But to the extent that the Judicial and Legal Service Commission is controlled by politicians, to the extent that the Public Service Commission is controlled by politicians, I guess the Parliamentary Commission is the same. The commission is made up of politicians. The Speaker is the chairman, and I think it's intended for the President of the Senate to be the deputy chairperson. And so, from that aspect, the persons who they recruit and hire, I don't know, you have to take it at their word that it was done independently.
But based on what has been demonstrated, right? Based on what has been demonstrated over the last 3 or 4 administrations, you know what's going to happen. You don't have to guess.
I am not as, I don't have such a negative view as you would see this, but I have some confidence that people who apply for positions at Parliament will not only be persons from one who support one political party, and
you really believe that?
I truly believe that. Now, I'm not going to say that the politician isn't going to tell his constituent to apply for this position, and they probably will get it. But I think the process is open, and I think we have to have some kind of confidence in our institutions. I think that's the only way our democracy is going to develop.
Mr. Tynes, you are an expert in these parliamentary matters, right? And I know, Mr. Tynes, you had to be appalled by the fact that we have members sitting in Parliament who didn't know the Westminster system, sir. All right? Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I can't.
I go further.
I wouldn't say you're wrong.
I go further, right? Political parties have been presenting the Bahamian public, right, with illiterate people to serve in Parliament.
Wow.
They don't know wow. You know the truth. There was a parliamentarian who couldn't even read numbers. Huh? Am I right or wrong?
I know there was a...
No. Am I right or wrong?
Couldn't try to put words in my mouth.
Couldn't read numbers, right?
But
that's a sign.
I know there was a lady who had trouble reading off a set of numbers.
That's a sign of being illiterate.
Let me go back to this, your question of local government.
Yeah.
A lot of people who've served and probably are serving in our Parliament today are probably better suited to serve at the local government level. Most mature democracies have at least 2 levels of representation.
Yes.
At the local government level, where you represent your community interests, and then at the national level, where you represent at the national level. Now, to the extent that we have not, local government ought to have started in the Providence, where all the people reside, to my view. And if we had done it properly, I don't support like the parishes, like how some of the Caribbean countries are, but I think the Royal Bahamas Police Force has the island of New Providence divided into districts. Now, we don't have to follow that, but I think the island ought to be divided into local government communities who elect their own local assemblies. And at that assembly, they debate their local issues.
Yeah.
And then that would also prepare some people to go to represent at the national level.
Yes.
And I think that is a big part of our democracy that is missing. I agree with you with that.
Exactly. You know, I have told Kristen the story a number of times. There was once a minister of agriculture in Trinidad, right? He told me that it took him 15 years to get from the local government level to the national level. So when he was elevated to be a candidate for national election,
He was
he had
prepared.
experience,
Yes.
right? He had experience at the local government level, right? But in the Bahamas, a fella could be a dog catcher tomorrow and a minister today, right? That's literally, that's what happens.
What do you believe, Mr. Tynes, would be the appropriate qualifications for a person who would chair this commission, or let me specify it to the Speaker of the House of Assembly?
Well, I think the person who ought to chair it is the Speaker of the House.
But what should be the qualifications for a person wishing
Be
to
Speaker?
be Speaker of the
Well,
House of Assembly?
I think we've made a couple of mistakes where, in my view, where we have appointed people as presiding officers of the two chambers who are first-time
Yes.
parliamentarians.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that is something that doesn't really help our democracy, because by the time they learn all the nuances of the position, it's time for another election. And then how we've been going, the party get voted out, so they have no chance to be the speaker in the during the second term. But how I think it ought to work is a person who has been in the House, sat there for at least 5 years, and was interested in the procedural parts of the Parliament. That kind of person ought to go up as Deputy Speaker, and then next term serve as Speaker.
Well, that is the
so
procedure.
it's a process.
That's
Yes.
the procedure in our mother Parliament,
Yes.
Yeah,
in the House of Commons.
But none of the mature parliaments you'll see a first-time parliamentarian as the presiding officer.
I believe you have to serve at least 2 or 3 terms before you can be even Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons.
I don't know if I don't think there is a benchmark like that, but you need to have experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have
And in those countries, the speaker usually goes unopposed.
Well, after the first term,
Yeah.
yes, if normally they would go unopposed by the major parties.
Yeah.
You have speakers like John Bercow of the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, who was in Parliament for at least 50 and 20 years before he became
Yes,
Speaker.
yeah.
And he brings to the position at that point a wealth of knowledge and parliamentary debate, as well as conventions of the Westminster
Exactly.
system that
And-
ought to be recognized and ought to be respected in the parliamentary process.
And he has become almost independent of his party because of his stature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think that we haven't groomed parliamentarians. They haven't been in the House long enough, some of them, to Parliament is supposed to have some expertise in there, because they're dealing with a whole lot of different far-ranging issues. So, say in the British and American system, they have certain politicians who have been there for a number of terms, so they've developed expertise in certain areas. We have very few examples.
We haven't had that in recent times, but when you look back, Mr. Tynes, you can correct me, right? When you look back at Sir Asa Pritchard, a speaker, all right? Sir Kenneth Solomon, a speaker, all right? Sir Alvin Brennan, a speaker.
Yes.
These were men who had expertise, and like you said, prepared themselves, because at one time, the Speaker was the highest elective office in the colony of the Bahamas.
Yes.
And in many ways, the Speaker was equivalent to a Prime Minister. That's the kind of authority and power the Speaker had, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right?
The Speaker lives in England. The Speaker lives in the Westminster Palace. And when the Prime Minister wants to have a conversation with the Speaker, he goes to the Palace. The Speaker doesn't go to 10th Downing Street. The Prime Minister comes to the Speaker. That is the kind of statute. And I think in the Bahamas, where we haven't developed that convention, I think we ought to put it in either in our rules in the House or in law where once you are elected speaker, you resign from your party.
Yeah.
That in itself would give the parents, at least the parents,
Impartiality.
of impartiality.
Yeah.
And but we haven't gotten there yet. Hopefully we'll get there at some point. And I think we can pick from the different parliaments the better attitudes and procedures that they have, and
Mr.
just adopt them.
When you look at, I listened to the debate on this bill, right? And some of the dates that these parliamentarians were quoting were wrong, right? The Bahamas has the third oldest parliament in the hemisphere. Only Bermuda and Barbados are older, all right?
We older than the United States.
Older than the United States.
Older than Canada.
Yes. So the Bahamas has had a long tradition in parliamentary democracy, all right?
Parliamentary, I won't call it democracy.
Yeah, parliament, you had to elect people to go to parliament. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't a democracy because
What do you mean?
women couldn't run and vote. Black people would say they couldn't run and vote. I don't call that democracy.
I wouldn't call that democracy.
Anyway, in parliamentary.
It's representation. Yeah. We always had the representative quality.
Representative government,
Yeah.
But I mean, it is just that I think what caused the problem is when party politics was introduced.
Well, that certainly was and I've written about this.
Yeah.
The introduction of party politics really changed
Yes.
the way we do politics in fundamental ways. Some good, and some not so good.
Right. What about even the building, the structure in which our parliament
Well,
sits?
one of my problems with this bill is I don't think you could truly, fully implement it without a new parliament. Because the clerk needs an office, the deputy clerk needs an office, the
Parliamentarians need office.
parliamentarians need office, the speaker needs a proper office.
Yeah.
So I think the building of a new parliamentary complex is essential. And I don't know why it's taken all of these decades of politicians to understand that. It's fundamental. It's fundamental to the work that they do. The buildings that we occupy now were built in the early 19th century. They're over 200 years old.
Yeah.
When they were built, there were no women, like I said, no women in parliament.
The handicapped people.
Security was not an issue.
Yeah.
There were no vehicles, so there was no issues of parking. Yeah. We built it right in the middle of the square.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think I know the House passed a resolution to construct a new parliamentary complex. I don't know how. I haven't heard of any movement of it. They probably doing something in the background that I don't know about. But I really think that's a priority for any administration.
And then we live in the age of technology.
Yes. So members need the technology. Even the Turks and Caicos Islands where I just came from yesterday, their parliamentarians have tablets.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff they can just do. They don't have to do it manually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A minister may want to show a project.
We really, and I think that all of the electrical wiring in the buildings is very old, so they can't accommodate some of the new technology.
There's rodents running under the floorboards. I'm listening to the debate in the House of Assembly. I think it was on Wednesday afternoon, and I can't hear the person who's speaking because the ambulance is passing.
Yeah.
And it's different issues like this that show or demonstrate that we definitely have outgrown the current premises that the Parliament sits in. And, my only question is why it has taken us so long. And when we look at even this act and what it proposes to do. And we talk about all of these inconsistencies in the rule and form of parliamentary practice in the country. It makes me believe as if we just don't believe in democracy in the country. Definitely, we don't value it.
Well, I could say that I think the process of deepening the democracy, um, whenever you do reforms, it takes away some powers from the leaders of the country.
Yeah.
And a lot
You
of,
don't want
and
that.
sometimes they are reluctant to give up even a small bit of their power. I think that's an issue. We have been very slow in the Bahamas to do reforms to our parliamentary. I can talk about the parliamentary institutions because when you look at it, women voted for the first time in 1962. It might seem a long time to some young people, but even me, I remember that when it happened. It's very recent in terms of history. Um, we needed to own property a certain amount or pay rent a certain amount to be able to vote.
Yeah.
There's a lot of and these things, like I say, just happened in recent times. We just started secret voting by secret ballot in 1949. A lot of people don't understand or don't know
Vote open.
that Milo Butler was the first person elected to the House who was elected by secret ballot. He, in
Yes.
1939, I think
Yeah.
it was, Zahari Oaks was the member of Parliament for the Western District. He at that time, the Senate, which was then the Legislative Council, was the more prestigious chamber of the two, and people preferred being there, where the gentlemen were down in the rough and tumble House of Assembly, and so his friends organized him to get a call up from the elected House to the Legislative Council, and that vacancy created a by-election in 1939, and Milo Butler won that seat. And earlier that year, they had passed the Secret Ballot Act, but they had limited it just to New Providence, and they limited it's only passed for a certain number of years. But it was in effect when they had the by-election in, I think it was October or November of 1939 when he was elected. And so he was the first person to be elected by secret ballot in the Bahamas.
And in those days, the House of Assembly, you were elected for 7 years.
Yes. Yeah, I think that changed in 1962. That was one of the reforms that came about in 1962. It's now at 5 years. I think there are still some things that we can do to
Mr. Tynes,
to deepen it.
I can remember, right, when I joined the public service, that people who were working in the House of Assembly or in the Senate only part-time,
Yeah.
right? They didn't have no full-time,
Well, they had some full-time people.
maybe one or two.
Yeah.
But I can remember you being a part-time, because you were in the cabinet office.
No. I was in immigration first.
Well, I remember you being in the cabinet office. And then,
Yes,
and
I
then-
came from cabinet
and
office
then being assigned
in the Senate.
to the Senate.
Yes.
Because in those days, right? In those days, for example, when the budget was being debated, all right, Krista, when the budget was being debated, you public officers had to accompany senators and members of parliament to the House during debates or when critical issues came up, because they would come over and say, explain this to me, right? Or why is the budget this amount? And as a young officer, I had to, I remember distinctly accompanying Milo Butler Jr. And, here he was standing younger than me. He was sitting
Don't look so.
in the Senate, you know what I mean? So it was a different, ministers didn't go to the House talking foolishness.
And in addition,
At what point did that change?
That changed when members of parliament get dumbed down. Now, some people may not like that, right? That's where that changed, all right? When you went to the house, my boy, you had to go prepared, and there was no, you couldn't read, right? What is the word for when you had to? It was a real debating chamber, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Copious notes.
Copious notes. Yeah. You have copious. You could
Right?
refer
You
to
could refer.
copious notes, but the rule is still that you're not supposed to be reading speeches in the house now.
No.
So I look at people reading with their
Yeah,
head
yeah.
down the whole time,
Reading and don't know what they're reading.
And then other people write them. So you're injecting other people's
The
views.
Prime Minister
yeah.
reads speeches in the
Yeah.
House of Assembly.
The Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This
But
started.
copious notes was a no-no.
This only started in the early '90s, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prior to that, they never read speeches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so people would go to the house to hear debates, and people, you had some eloquent speakers in the house, Brian. All right?
And the thing is, the House rules provide that there'll be a finance committee which is empowered to call
People-
financial people from different ministries
Yeah.
and departments and let them explain what's in their budget. And so when they go to the House, it would not be so much questions. I advocate that what should happen is after the bill has been read a second time and when they go in committee of the whole, that you bring all of the PSs and all of the finance people to the House, and then let the members of Parliament ask them questions. Let them answer questions, because a lot of times, if you had a question and answer period for the budget, they say, "Oh, I have to bring that information back. It's never brought back."
Yeah.
And so the people who could answer the questions will be right there in the House
Yeah. Yeah.
to answer directly to the members of Parliament. So I don't know why we don't use that facility, because it's there in the rules and it could happen.
But Mr. Tynes, and when you look at deep reflection, right? The House, in many ways, I wouldn't say it's dysfunctional, but the House doesn't function the way. For example, matters don't go to committees anymore. Well, when do you hear committees reporting, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
That used to be a big issue.
Yes.
When you send a matter to a committee, and then the House was awaiting the report of the committee.
Yeah.
Right?
And the problem with committee reports is that the rules don't provide for deadlines for the government to answer these these reports. And
So they die in committee.
So they stay on the table, on the floor, and they die right there. So I think we have to put in the rules deadlines for the executive branch to answer,
Yes.
to respond to reports of
You
committees.
take for example, in the old days, right? This issue with this immigration issue, right? The speaker would have sent it to committee, all right, and the committee would have examined the convolution of the whole issue.
Calling all of the
Right, and reported, right?
people, yeah.
Reported, right? An impartial report, right?
Right.
And the committee had authority to ask persons and this or that to come and give, and that way the public would get an objective view of the issue.
Right. Mr.
a
Tynes,
more objective.
Yeah.
what about the Public Accounts Committee?
What about it?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Well, I always had the view that the Public Accounts Committee was a very important
It
tool
is.
that the opposition
Yeah.
use.
Right.
But for some reason, they don't seem to appreciate the value of it. And there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the powers of the Accounts Committee. We have sent people off to London to do these Public Accounts Committee seminars and conferences. But see, the thing is, in England, their parliament is
It functions, it works.
it's all it's all empowering. The courts cannot overturn legislation by the House of Commons. So their committees are powerful. In over here, we are subject to the Constitution.
Yeah.
So the Public Accounts Committee has to apply to the Constitution.
Right.
And the Constitution says that I think, or the rules say that when a matter is sent, when a report, say BPL sends a annual report into the House, that is normally would automatically be referred to the Public Accounts Committee. But it has already been audited and everything like that, and so it's ready for that. Some of these issues that they want audited or sent to the Public Accounts Committee are not audited, so you don't know all of the full story of it. And so I think we have to address the power of the Public Accounts Committee. And I think while we're doing these bills, we're doing these independent bills, it's the perfect time to do it now.
Good.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, another thing it'd be a perfect time to introduce. How come we don't have an ombudsman? That's an important part about, particularly in a country where your members of parliament don't often respond, right?
Yeah.
So if you have an ombudsman,
It's been promised by almost all.
explain to our listeners what an ombudsman is.
Ombudsman receives complaints from the public regarding the parliamentarians or something the parliament did, and they are authorized by the parliament to address the problems and make a report to the House. I think the United States deals with it. What they call them? Each department has a
Ethics, something like that.
Inspector General.
Inspector General. That's
yeah.
Inspector General. That does it for the different departments over there.
Right.
And so they address it that way. Now, my problem is if you do an ombudsman, people don't complain that man, this person was elected, was appointed politically. So but I think we have this partisanship we have to get over it, the tribalistic part of it.
Yeah.
We have to get over. And this is one of the aspects of political parties in the House that's been problematic. I have written that with the introduction of political parties in the House, the problem was at that time, the difference between the government and the opposition at that time was not only through ideology, it was also a racial thing. It was a racial problem. And that aspect of it was dimmed down a bit, but it still exists. It still exists in our politics.
Mr. Tynes, I can remember, I think it was during the Ingram government, where he brought in some people from Jamaica and had prior to the House meeting, he had a sort of a educational session with incoming parliamentarians. All right? How does an individual who's never been to parliament, never been elected, right?
Well, we've always
learn the rules and regulations, right? And you had people like Mr. Hanna, who became an authority on parliamentary procedures. You know what I mean? I can remember very clearly him, standing up and being able to quote, as you lawyers do, Robert's rules,
Mays.
and Mays, you know what I mean?
Erskine May.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah. How,
the House itself, the Parliament itself has always put on what we call post-election seminars for our parliamentarians. But they are no means the vehicle to educate them. When you offer yourself to run to represent people, you want to come with a certain set of understanding of the investment system,
Yeah.
of the Bahamas financial system,
Yeah, yeah.
and some aspect of international politics. So when you come there, you come with this, but the seminars are just there to give you some
Some guidance.
guidance from what happens locally in our system.
Yeah.
But we've always had them, and we've always brought in. We usually use speakers of other parliaments because of their understanding of the procedures, or some experienced clerks. One of my mentors was George Brinker, who was the longtime clerk in Barbados. He was commissioned by Mr. Ingram to come here to draft the new rules of the House. So the foundational part of our rules now was written by George Brinker, and they were based basically on the Barbadian rules. We tweaked them. So there were some things that we left out or we didn't put in. But that's what we have a rules committee that's supposed to go make these changes. I don't know if you all remember, there was a big argument between myself and the former speaker.
Yeah.
When he said that when he came there, he met 3 different rule books and he didn't know which one to go by, which was not true.
Yeah.
Because somebody may have left a copy of the old one in his desk or something like that, but we had new rules printed and distributed to all the members of Parliament. And it should be an ongoing thing to update them.
Right. At this point, Mr. Tynes, we have to take our first break on our program, Jones and Company. So we'll do that. We'll be right back.